Okay, so I haven't had any motivation to make content recently, but I had a conversation with somebody that was learning Spanish, and they were asking me what did I find most difficult. So I was like, oh, that could be a good idea for a video. I really don't like making content unless it's just like something that I genuinely want to do. I don't like making forced videos. So I am going to talk about like 3 to 5 things that I found and still kind of find difficult. And I'll give you some ways that I deal with it. I don't want to make this like a real grammar lesson, so I'm not going to get super in detail about it, but I'm just going to name the things and some things that I use to help myself. And if you have more questions about it, I can respond to you directly and tell you more stuff. But obviously, the first thing on my list is the subjunctive mood, right? And there was something I read one time that really helped me get a better understanding of the subjunctive. When I first tried to understand it, probably the same thing that happens to most people happened to me, where I was like, I don't understand this, or you think you understand it, and then something happens and you're like, never mind, I don't understand it at all. And the way that I helped myself, I read this post and it was talking about how English is totally different. Like when we say stuff, it's neutral. Whereas like the indicative in Spanish, it's a fact. You know, if I say, estás aquí, it's a fact, like you're here, or at least in my mind anyways, I think like 100% that you're here, right? And so when I'm talking about something that's a possibility that I don't know, it's the subjunctive. So instead of thinking, why am I using the subjunctive? Like the thing that I think of is, why is this not the indicative? And that helps me a lot, if that makes sense. I think, why is this not 100% a fact? For instance, a sentence like, Jalen.k.shabazz se vaya. There's a possibility that the third person is not gonna go. Like if I say se va, it's like this person is going. That's a fact. So if I tell you to tell that person to leave, it's not a fact that they are going. They might not listen to you. You might never get to tell them. You get what I'm saying? Like when you think of it like that, why is this part not a fact? It makes the subjunctive a lot easier. And it's really hard for a native Spanish speaker to explain that to you, because like they think in facts. They think like their indicative is a fact, whereas the way we think is not in facts. So it's always gonna be somewhat difficult to us. But like, besides thinking of it that way, the best way is literally practice. Reading, listening, and there's just like triggers that you hear. Like most of the time when you say cuando, you know that you're probably gonna say something in the subjunctive, because if you're saying when something happens, you probably don't know if it's gonna happen. You're not God, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, just certain stuff like that, cuando, hasta que, blah, 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 stuff like that, where it's like almost 100% of the time after you say those phrases, it triggers the subjunctive because you're talking about something that's uncertain, right? So that's number one. Let's get into number two. Number two, the different forms of the past tense. I think all of us that are native English speakers find that difficult. And the thing that I do to help myself with that is like, I do not think about it in English. If you think about it in English, it's gonna mess you up for the most part. For instance, like whenever you're talking about age, it's always tenía. It's always tenía and not tuvo or something like that. And time. When I first started, I used to say stuff like, I can't even think of what I would say, but it's always eran or era. It's not, it's nothing else. And the more practice that you have, the more you'll realize stuff like that. So obviously, like the answer to a lot of these problems are to practice more, right? Talk to more native speakers, get corrections. But sometimes there's little stuff that you can do to help yourself think about it. So that's 2 things. Hopefully this will be a list of 5, but I don't know, because there's people getting close to the door and I'm about to freak out and run away, bro. I'm not that kind of content creator. If someone walks in here, I'm absolutely gonna stop talking. I'm not like, I just feel weird, bro. I'm not gonna keep talking about this. If someone walks in and starts stretching next to me, I'm just gonna click the video and upload this. It's 2 things that give me trouble in Spanish. 1 second. Okay, the third thing, it kind of goes with the thing that I just talked about, but it was really difficult for me to not try to think in English. And that just comes with practice and having more experiences, but specifically I'm talking about things like the verb like gustar, encantar. If you try to think about that stuff in English, it's gonna mess you up, like 100%. For the most part, we don't say things like, this pleases me. That's like some real like villainous talk, right? Like, this pleases me, this enchants me. Like we don't talk like that. So you can't yeah, you can say like, oh, if I say me gusta, that means I like this thing, but it's really like, this gives me pleasure. And you can't think of it in English. You just have to learn how it's used, and it's gonna help you a lot. Because like, if you think of it as, oh, me gusta, te gusta, like that means I like or you like, then when someone says like, te va a gustar, you're gonna be like, you're gonna be super confused, because you shouldn't be trying to put it in English. You should just understand this. If someone says te va a gustar, like, it means what it means, right? So yeah, translating things to English, big no-go, especially with phrases. Like, the phrases are never gonna make sense in English. Now, obviously, like, you're an adult already. If you're watching this video, you're probably an adult. If you're a kid, you probably shouldn't be watching this. But you already have a base. You already have another language that you speak. So it's pretty impossible to not think in English. Like, you have to make certain stuff make sense to you by using your English. And that's gonna help you progress along faster, right? But what I'm talking about is like direct translations. Sometimes you just have to say, this is how it is, and that's just it. That's just it. Straight up. The moment you kind of let go of trying to make things make sense in English, I think it'll help your Spanish a lot. Moving on, we got 2 more things. That was 3, right? Let me think a little bit. Let me think. Number 4, I would say false cognates. So obviously a lot of us know that, like, if something ends in Asian, most of the time you can say acción. If something ends in ent, it might turn into ente, like president, presidente, something like that, right? But sometimes it doesn't work out, right? I remember for a long time, and I hate thinking about it because I look back on it and I'm embarrassed. For a long time, I was saying actualmente when I was thinking actually, but it's not the same thing. Actualmente is like currently. Actual is like current. So I would be thinking like, actually blah, blah, blah. And I was really saying currently blah, blah, blah. And that might sound like it's not a difference, but it is. Like, and I don't even know how to explain how that's different, but it's a big difference, especially when you're trying to get a certain point across, right? Also, I can distinctly remember a time that I said embarazada, trying to say embarrassed, and that means pregnant if you don't know. So that was a bit of an awkward conversation. My very first client that spoke Spanish, I told a story about Valeria in another video, but I remember I told my wife about this. I said, "Estás caliente?" because it was hot in the gym, bro, and I kind of knew, bro. I knew after I said it, I'm like, something was wrong about that, but I don't know what it was. And like her face got so red, and I was like, oh, I know what I did now. If you don't know what that means, Google it and make sure you never ask anybody that, okay? Like, that's not how you ask someone if they're hot. It's not, bro, okay? So false cognates, I'll say that's number 4. And the only way you could really get better with that, same thing, practice, read, get context on words, make sure you know what you're saying before you say it. The 5th thing is not so much of a direct thing as much as it is something like intangible. So like, the toughest part for me speaking was that I was treating it like a goal, bro. I was like, I want to be able to talk like this. I want to be able to be super fluent. I want to be able to walk up to someone and not make any mistakes. And that was actually making my conversations worse when I started, because I would get so embarrassed that I would mess up. I would get so angry that I couldn't come up with certain words. When like really, you have to remember why you're learning another language, whether it's Spanish or whatever. The whole point is to be able to communicate with people, right? And so I would find myself, like I would hear someone speaking Spanish and I wouldn't talk to him because I'll be like his accent is kind of crazy, like I'm gonna be confused. And this would be someone that might need help with something. This would be someone that is looking for something. And I could have helped them, but I'm like, no, it's gonna be embarrassing, and I wouldn't do it. And that totally defeats the purpose of why you're learning another language. You're learning another language to be able to communicate with people. And I've said this before too. When people speak English to me that's not amazing, it doesn't matter. I'm never like, oh my God, this guy's English sucks. I'm like, whatever he's saying, I'm just trying to get the message. If it's a little off, I'm like, oh, do you mean this? And they're like, yeah, that. And I'm like, oh yeah, cool, I know about that. Whatever. So yeah, number 5 is making it something other than connections. Like you're doing this to connect with people. And when you remember that and you take the stress off of yourself, no one cares, bro. No one cares if you're making grammar mistakes. Like you're learning something. Like you're gonna make mistakes. Probably, like I make mistakes in English all the time. I just don't care. I know people know what I'm trying to get at, and that's all that matters. And so, yeah, that's the attitude I started taking with Spanish. I know I'm gonna make mistakes. Literally, every time I talk to somebody, my conversations get better. And I still make mistakes. And they just correct me, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that. I said something yesterday. I can't remember what I said, but like right after I got corrected, I was like, yeah, I don't know what I said the first time. But, you know, after that, things got better. So, yeah, somebody just walked in, so I'm definitely about to stop this. But I hope that was everything that you needed, and I hope that helps you with what you're trying to do. All right, peace.